Pastor Jeffrey Miller from Hope Lutheran Church in Water Street, Michigan, Land O'Lakes, Wisconsin. There were a number of years ago, there was an article that was titled Pick and Choose Christianity. It was in some national magazine, and in there they said that they had done this 3-year study of Christians of all denominations in the Midwest area. And they pointed out that most Christians, most church members are just going to pick and choose the teachings of Christianity that they like, and of course, they're going to reject the ones that they don't like. And this has been going on, really. This study isn't new. I mean, this has been going on throughout all of Christianity. I think, if I remember right, it was Thomas Jefferson. If you ever go to his homestead, and his homestead, his Bible is there, and it is encased so that you can see of how strong of a Christian he was. And the thing you're going to really notice about his Bible is that it doesn't have all the pages in it. His Bible is such that he kept the sections that he liked, and he tore out the sections he doesn't like. So we've been doing this forever, and we justify our sinfulness, don't we? You remember our Bible study last week, our memory verse. I believe it was last week. And we talked about that very familiar verse. If we say we have no sin, we deceive ourselves, and the truth is not in us. And we talked about the importance of gathering in the Lord's house and confessing our sins, not just to God, but corporately with each other, recognizing that we are sinners. Well, the article had said that the majority of the people indicated that they believed in the reality of personal sin, but they were nowhere near ready to acknowledge that all of humanity is sinful. They were willing to acknowledge sins, the ones that they know of in their heads, right? But they weren't ready to acknowledge sin as a whole. So that already tells you that the article of original sin is something that is not on their radar at all. And so they don't recognize that sin, It also said that they thought that though they were prone to mistakes, they maybe didn't see themselves as sinful, and so this understanding of sin, this lack of understanding of sin, or denial of sin, is very dangerous. It is why we speak oftentimes about being extremely discerning with when you're in church, not just here at Hope Lutheran Church, but wherever it is you go to church, or if you're watching some church preacher on a television, or listening to a podcast, or whatever the case may be. Take note if that preacher, if that teacher is talking about sin and the depravity of sin and the nature of sin, and that sin has poisoned us from conception, that sin is in the world, that our sin has affected even the rest of creation, that all of creation is groaning under the weight of sin because of sin. Because if they're not talking about sin, I encourage you to run away from them. recognizing our sin is vital. It is a center of a centrality of our faith. Why? Well, we say Jesus is the centrality of our faith. And that's true. But what is Jesus if we don't recognize the depravity of sin? Who is the Jesus that we say we confess and we acknowledge and we believe? If we don't recognize that we are sin, and that we can't do anything about it, that we are helpless and hopeless because of that sin. That's what our text was last week. Well, our memory verse for this week is from 1 John. We're not in chapter 1, we're in chapter 2. And it'll be the second verse. He is the propitiation for our sins, and not for ours only, but also for the sins of the whole world. Christ is the propitiation. Christ, that's a churchy word, right? We hear it in church. There's a couple of texts that talk about Christ as being the propitiation. In fact, if your church has readers, it's not unusual for the reader to mispronounce the word. I've heard that on countless occasions over my ministry. Or if we are reading something together, if you listen, there are folks that can't even they can't enunciate the word because it's a word that's not generally used in society. What is propitiation? Jesus is the propitiation for our sins. It means Jesus is the satisfaction for our sins. God so loved the world, right? That he gave, that he gave up, that he turned over his son for us so that we would be saved. Punishment has to be made for sin, for all sin. Not some of them, all sin. Not just our sins, but all of sin. It had to be paid for. Jesus is the satisfaction. Jesus is the full payment. So when he suffers and dies on the cross, and he experiences hell for us, he experiences the forsakenness of God for us, he experiences God's divine wrath. When he says it is finished, it means all sin has been satisfied. All sin. Note once when you're in church, note how often as you are singing hymns, or even as you're reading the text or you're listening to pastor, notice how often the word will be sin and not sins. We'll see that in our liturgy. You'll see it in hymn. It is because while it is true, we certainly recognize those individual sins that we commit in thought, word, and deed, those things that we do, the things that we don't do that we should be doing, all of that stuff. We do recognize those sins. We also recognize sin. And that Jesus is the propitiation. He is the satisfaction that covers all of that sin. Not just ours, but the whole world. I look forward to talking to you next week.